let's talk about the introduction to networks and how we're globally connected, and get down some vocabulary that's going to be really important that you know when we get to the previous chapters. So first, let's talk about how networks affect our everyday life.
Welcome to a brand new day. A new way of getting things done. Welcome to a place where maps are rewritten and remote villages are included. A place where body language is business language. Where people subscribe to people, not magazines. And the team you followed now follows you. Welcome to a place where books rewrite themselves. Where you can drag and drop people wherever they want to go. And a phone doubles as a train ticket, plane ticket, or lift ticket. Welcome to a place where a wedding is captured and recaptured again and again. Where a home video is experienced everywhere at once. Where a library travels across the world. Where businesses are born, countries are transformed, and we're more powerful together than we ever could be apart. Welcome to the Human Network.
Special bonus points if you can name the song and the band behind that video.
Blue Man Group.
What?
Blue Man Group.
Gosh,
No, that's not Blue Man.
Please,
That's 100% Blue Man Group.
please, someone, please.
Okay,
For future generations. One of the greatest bands ever.
The Who?
Thank you, and the song?
Maybe O'Reilly?
15 points here.
Right? Thank goodness, I was worried. Yeah, please go check out the video if you're not familiar.
Well, you don't look like you would like be into
I love classic rock. My parents raised me right.
classic vinyl on series.
No serious, but yeah.
But I mean, that's what they
kind of
do, all those Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. Oh, love Led Zeppelin. Yes, I love all that kind of stuff. Okay, so let's talk about how networks have supported some of the different ways that we interact with each other. First off, learning. Well, online distance learning is obviously a thing. You have a Moodle that you log into so I can communicate with you wherever you are. So that's one way that networks have influenced the way we learn. We communicate by texting, by social media. Who does not have a social media account in here? Every single person in this room. Okay, 2. Okay, so the vast majority of us use social media in some context, right? We have blogs, so we can talk to a global audience. We have wikis that people can edit and do together. We have podcasting, delivering essentially a radio show that you can tune into at any time that you want to. We've got file sharing. We're not going to talk about all the bad ways that can be used, but it is a form of networking together. Networks run businesses. They transmit data, email, video, messaging, and telephony, which is one of my favorite networking words. And we can also game. I have to have a room full of gamers, right? Who games in here? Yes, me too. Okay.
You do Doom?
So, huh?
You don't do Doom?
No Doom. No, I'm not coordinated enough for things like that. But I do enjoy gaming well. We stream content. We watch movies. We read books online. We have moved to a culture where things are viewed on demand, which is a thing that I love. Because if I miss something on television, it makes no difference because the next day it's on Hulu anyway. And I love it, right? Let's talk about the sizes of networks. So a small home network is just connecting a few computers together to the internet. That is something that we probably all have in our homes. We've got a small office, home office network. So this is a computer within a home office or remote office that connects to some sort of corporate network Because there's some sort of shared resource on that corporate network that those people need to be able to get to. We've got the medium to the large networks. That would be like TSTC. It's an organization, it's a school, many locations, hundreds and thousands of computers that are interconnected. When you think about it, TSTC has, is it 12 or 13 campuses? And all of them are interconnected through Waco in some way. The Moodle that you log into, the portal that you log into, Web Advisor, all of that is interconnected to what I call the mothership, which is TSTC in Waco. So although we are lots of different geographically stretched out places, some way out in West Texas where there's just nothing else but the TSTC, we're still all interconnected because of the internet. So the internet is a network of networks that connects hundreds of millions of computers worldwide. A client, the term client just means it's used to access something. That something can be lots of different things. A server is something that serves up a resource. That resource can be lots of different things. So for example, an email server runs email software. Clients use their client software to connect to it so they can download email and send email. So that makes sense. It's an email server for the purposes of email. A web server runs web software. The clients connect to it. And like Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, Firefox, whatever your preferential browser is, they access web pages via a web server. A file server stores some sort of corporate or user files in some centralized location. So the client accesses those files like through Windows Explorer, so just like a file explorer of some sort. A peer-to-peer network, there's two main kinds of networks that we'll talk about. One of them is a peer-to-peer network. So here we have one computer that acts as both a client and a server at the same time. So they're both peers, they're both equal. There's not one that has more than the other necessarily or more privilege than the other, but they are talking to each other. So for example, the computer that's labeled print sharing has a printer to share because it's the thing that's connected to the printer. And the other computer that says file sharing has files to share, so they can talk to each other and use each other as they need to. Now what's good about this is it's really easy to set up and it's not very complicated, but what's bad about it is there's no centralized administration. Centralized administration is the meat of network administration. It's the good stuff. It's the stuff that keeps you from having to go from one computer to the next over and over and over thousands of times to get something done. And hopefully you will all be very, very good at that before you leave TSTC. But it's not scalable, right? If I want to connect another computer, I plug another computer in, hey, that part's easy, but then I have to get all three of them to talk to each other. Then I need a fourth one. Then all four of them have to talk to each other. And then that way it becomes kind of a pain. So that's not really what we want as network administrators for our networks to be like. We would prefer to have more of a client server, which we will talk about. So let's talk about LANs, WANs, and the internet. Again, establishing a little bit of vocabulary. So there's three ingredients when it comes to making a network. There's devices, there's media, and there's services. We're going to talk about what those things are. The devices are the actual hardware of the network, the actual physical things that you can touch that plug into an outlet and have blinky lights on them, right? That's a device. That can be a switch, it can be a server, it can be an IP-based phone, it can be a client, it can be a router. Everything you see in here is some sort of device. The media is the wires. It's the stuff that interconnects all the different kinds of devices. Now some things are wireless, so wireless is a form of media. But what you're seeing in this picture is a wired network, and everywhere you see a black line, it's a representation of some sort of cable that's connecting things together. Services are applications like a web browser or email software. So, for example, you can see a service here, someone has pulled up a web page. So that being able to get to a web page is an example of a service on a network. These are what Cisco calls end devices. So if you weren't here the last time we met, this class serves as your first half of the CSIN exam. So it is pretty Cisco-centric, and we're going to work with Cisco stuff a lot. So we're going by what Cisco calls things, because later on when you get to the higher level Cisco exams, it'll be a lot easier for you to catch on. Okay, so here's some of our end devices. So these icons are specific to what Cisco makes their icons look like, because this is what we're going to be used to seeing. People are most familiar with these devices because they probably used them before. But when data gets sent over a network, the end device is either the source or the destination of that occurring. Okay, so they get an address, so we can tell them all apart. We'll talk about addressing quite a bit throughout this course. But you've probably used one of these before, you know what it is. Maybe with the exception of a telepresence endpoint, because those are super expensive. But we actually have one here that we do roll around occasionally. Then we have the category of an intermediary network device. So these connect to the end devices that we just saw in the previous slide. They are generally locked away out of a normal user's reach. They're in some sort of telecommunications closet or a server closet or something. It's maybe not something that us as an end user has to be able to get to be able to use our computers. But they connect to other networks as well, like the internet, for example. So this determines the path that data is supposed to take to get from its source to its destination. That's what an intermediary network device does. Within our network media, we talked about wireless already being a way of transporting between devices. We also have copper. So copper is what we most commonly see because it's cheap and it's pretty easy to use. So copper uses electrical impulses to move data, and what you're seeing up there is what we would call Category 5 cable, which we will, that's one of the reasons I wanted you to get those toolkits, is we're going to be making those quite a bit in this class. There's also fiber optic. It uses light to move data. So it travels a much farther distance, but it's very expensive to maintain and very difficult to put ends on so that you can interface it with these different devices. And then wireless uses wavelengths from the electromagnetic spectrum to move data. The type of network you choose depends on a whole lot of different factors. For example, what's the distance? If you need to carry something a really, really long distance, you have to use fiber optics. Because you know, when you get further away from a wireless access point, it gets slower and slower and slower to the point that you have nothing, right? What type of environment is the media being installed? We'll talk more about that. What is the amount of data and the speed at which it must be transmitted? Fiber optic does things really, really fast. Copper cabling does things quite a bit slower. So that is something to think about. And then what's the cost of the media? Copper media is really, really cheap and you can get it anywhere. Fiber optic media is really expensive. And you have to kind of have specialized set of skills to be able to use it. So looking at our representations of our network, we've talked about end devices, intermediary devices, and the different network media. So these are the way these things are going to be shown to you. So you should be able to see an icon as we go through the class and be able to identify what it's trying to convey to you because of that icon. So when you see a straight black line, it normally means it's wired. It's wired media, right? When you see a red kind of Z line, that means it's connecting two separate geographical networks of what we call a WAN. We use these icons a lot because as administrators, we lose track of where all the stuff is supposed to be interconnected. So a lot of times we will draw maps and use these icons in them so that if something breaks down later on, we can stop and say, okay, well, what other things is this connected to? Where do I go to locate it so that I can fix it? This is a NIC, or a network interface card. So this is providing a physical connection to the PC so that you can give it access to the local area network, or the LAN, which is just the network inside our building or our business. We have a couple different things worth talking about here. One is the physical port. So that's the actual connection spot, which is right here. So this is made to plug a copper cable into. An RJ45 jack, so that is the physical port where that happens. We also have the interface. The ports on a router are classified as an interface. This is classified as an interface. Interface just means something that you use to connect these things together. So although it's one specific piece, it could be called two different things. Just want you to be aware of that. This is a topology diagram. This is identifying the physical location of all these intermediary devices that we talked about and where the cables are installed. So there's two different kinds of topologies. The first one is a physical one. So this is literally divided out by room. If you were to do this at TSTC, you would end up with a whole bunch of blocks that look like classroom numbers. And then you would have all those devices divided up by classroom. There's a 48-port switch in that closet. I know because I helped install it about a semester ago. But that is an example of something that would be in the 249 room, right? So we've got all these endpoints, we've got this computer, we've got a networked printer, and we've got a switch. So just in this room, look at all the devices that are available. That is a physical topology. So in this instance, if the server, the email server, in this room 2158 fails, which component do I go look at first?
Say that again?
If the email server in this room fails, if I can't reach it, what's the first thing I go look at?
The switch.
The switch. I go look at switch 1 because A, it's the only thing connected to it, and 2, it's the next thing in line, right? So if I'm over here and I'm trying to connect with the email server and I can't, I go look at this part first, right? So that seems really easy, but if you don't have a diagram like that, you're like trying to follow cables through walls and you're freaking out, right? So that's the reason that we use diagrams like this. This is a logical topology diagram. So this identifies devices, ports, and different addressing schemes. So let's find switch 1 again, over here in the blue circle to the left. It has 4 things plugged into it, right? How do I know which one is connected to the email server? Well, I look here, here's the cable that connects the 2 things, and you see it has F0/2. That means port 2. So if I want to physically know, hey, port 2 in the switch is not blinking, it's not working, what is that going to affect? I can look at this diagram and say, that's going to affect the email server. I don't mean to pick on the email server, it was just there in both slides. But, so first we have physical locations, and then we have how are these things actually connected to each other. And both diagrams kind of have their own merits. So we can look at things like this, and we will do a lot of this in this class, of putting this kind of stuff together and interconnecting them and then trying to document how they're connected, because it's a really good habit to get into. The type of network that we talk about is determined by the size of the area that's covered, the users that are connected, the service available, and what we call the area of responsibility. So, for example, we have 2 different kinds of networks depicted here. We have a LAN and a WAN. So LAN is a local area network. So this is in a small geographical area. So you can see that we've got a home office, we've got a central, and a branch, and each one of those are LANs. They're generally within the same building. There's not that many users affected, let's say less than 50 or so. That could be a home, a small business, an IT department that manages that. So that is an example of a local area network. Then we have kind of in the pinkish color, the WAN. So the WAN is like a network infrastructure that provides access to other networks over the internet. So the internet is a network of networks, and because it's a network of networks, it connects all these little LANs together so we can all talk to each other. Normally a WAN, who's responsible for a WAN? If a LAN is going to be the IT department inside of it, who's responsible for the WAN? The wide area network.
IT.
Which IT? Who's responsible for fixing the internet when it breaks? Yes.
Your service provider.
Your service provider. Whoever your service provider is. If somebody runs a piece of construction equipment between a fiber optic line that's owned by Network Communications, who has to go fix it? Network Communications, right? So they're responsible for the big stuff that connects everybody together. The IT department, what we'll all be, is responsible for each individual LAN. Okay? So this LAN interconnects these end devices. So in this LAN we have a computer, a desktop computer. We have another desktop computer. We have an IP telephone. So we're 3 desktops and some sort of server unit. We don't know what that server is serving up because they don't really have an icon that tells us, but we can kind of see that it's a server from there. So this provides high-speed bandwidth to all these devices. So this is controlling the inside devices. The WAN, now we're separating different LANs across a geographical network. There's some other types of networks. There's a MAN, a metropolitan area network. So that is smaller than a LAN, but bigger than a LAN and smaller than a WAN. It would be like if a city had internet access. If they said, hey, from now on, Marshall has internet access. Because it's somewhere in between, it would be considered a LAN. There's a wireless LAN. That's just when everybody's connecting wirelessly in a small geographical area. Then there's a storage area network. So that is designed to support file servers and provide things like storage and data retrieval. So we use LANs and WANs to all interconnect to each other. Networks are different sizes. They're wired, they're wireless, but in the end, they're all connected to each other. An intranet is often used to refer to like this private connection within a company where the company accesses all their files on the intranet, but it's not really available to anybody on the outside. You could call the TSTC portal an intranet because you have to have a login to be able to get into it. And to get that login, you have to be a TSTC student or employee. So that is an example of an intranet. They might provide an extranet to people like, let's say, vendors, people they get their supplies from, so they can log in and see certain parts that they want them to see of the company stuff, but definitely not everything, right? And then there is, for example, let's say there's a hospital that has a booking system to doctors so they can make appointments for their patients. So maybe the patients can log in and see all the times that the doctor is available. That's a pipe dream though, right? Because that'll never happen. But it would be really cool if it did. Then we have the internet that kind of surrounds that, connecting everything together. So every network needs a connection to an ISP to connect to the internet. A lot of these are based on geography. So some of them you might not have ever heard of before because they're not available in where we live. So everything is an internet service provider. There are some different flavors of that: broadband cable, broadband DSL, wireless WANs. There are certain larger cities that have complete wireless capability. In fact, there's some country in South Africa that's completely wireless. Don't remember the name of it. There's different mobile services, business DSL, lease lines like T1 and T3 lines, if you've ever heard of those, and Metro Ethernet. For example, we don't have Metro Ethernet in this area, at least not yet. So at home I have broadband cable through Longview Cable. Does anyone else have to suffer through having Longview Cable at their home? Bless you all, I'm so happy for you. Oh, you, okay, Montana understands.
I have satellite, so.
Oh, that's
mine's
even worse.
worse.
Okay, so you have to deal with satellite, so it's unbelievably slow, and every time it rains, it stops working, right?
Yeah, the ping is horrible. It's like 1,500.
Yeah,
it's like
because it's literally got to go to space, so yeah, it's awful. So there's lots of different ways, and kind of depending on where you are. So we have cable that comes from your cable television provider. It's supposed to have really high bandwidth unless you live in Longview. DSL is supposed to have high bandwidth. It's always on, but it runs through the telephone line. So AT&T is the big person around here that gives DSL service. Cellular, using your cell phone network to connect. Anywhere that you can get cell phone signal, you can get internet access. So we do that through our LTE, stuff like that. And if you're on Verizon, you have LTE service. If you have AT&T, bless your heart. So satellite requires a clear line of sight to the satellite to work. So I know sometimes in the springtime, when the leaves come back on the trees, suddenly everybody's satellite connection kind of goes away. The dial-up telephone, that's the most expensive. Back in the day, that's all we had, so I'm a little nostalgic for dial-up. As far as what businesses can get, they can have have what they call a dedicated lease line. They're really expensive, but they're basically renting a circuit. So it's always available and it's always up. The Ethernet WAN is extending LAN access into the WAN. Business DSL can come in lots of different forms. It's really similar to what we would get just as consumers, except it's probably a little bit faster than I get preferred service.
Probably a lot faster.
Hmm?
So it's probably a lot faster.
Probably a lot faster. And with businesses can also get satellite whenever they don't have a wireless solution. So traditionally, networks were separate. So each separate network had this different standard they all had to go by. So this is referring to a computer network, telephone network, and then broadcast television networks. They were all running on separate networks, and they all had different rules to go by. And I think pretty recently, everything started to kind of converge. So now you don't just go to NBC and watch a television show. You can also go to NBC.com and watch it, you know, and then like the TiVo kind of era, started kind of bringing all this stuff together. So now we have what we call a converged network, which means everything just works on the internet. It's all together. There's no more dedicated telephone network. Everything is interconnected in some way. Clothes can be plugged into the internet and work. Everything is just data now, right? Which is cool, except that everybody wants to cap data now, so that we have to pay more for access. They're treating data like it's a utility because that's what was voted on. Within making a reliable network, there's 4 pieces of that. You need fault tolerance, scalability, quality of service, and security. Let's talk about those things. Fault tolerance limits the impact of failure if a device fails. So if this one thing breaks, the whole network doesn't shut down. So that's what we call failing gracefully, right? So something fails, but it doesn't take everything else down with it. So if, for example, that one router in red fails, the previous router has this secondary link. It says, don't worry, I know who else I can use. I'm going to go to this router underneath it, and all the data still works. That leaves the technicians time to fix that router without everybody being down. And downtime is the enemy of the network administrator.
Does it just slow it down?
It might slow it down, yes. It depends on how it's set up. It very well might slow it down. But at least it's not dead, right? Scalability is when new people need to be added to the network. It can be done without affecting every other person on the network. So there's normally some sort of rule or standard for this in the organization that you're working for, so you're not completely reinventing the wheel every time. You're just adding to an infrastructure that's already there. So for example, if we have to build up another classroom, because we have this client-server model, we can just throw some computers in there, hook them to a switch, hook that switch to the telecom closet, and we're done, right? We didn't have to build a network within each individual classroom to make all this stuff work together, because that would not be very scalable. Quality of service is used to manage congestion, ensuring that data gets where it's supposed to go. That's the whole point, right? So, for example, streaming media gets a high priority, because there's nothing worse than streaming some sort of media in a search to buffer, and people get robot voice, right? We expect more of our networks than that now. Web pages are going to have a higher priority, lower priority, because they're just loading pictures and text, and you can always hit refresh and try again. If you're streaming something, well, the moment's kind of lost if that doesn't happen. So a few seconds of delay may not make much difference for some kinds of traffic, but it may make a lot of difference for other kinds of traffic. So quality of service is kind of trying to go between those two and find out the happy medium for your network. Security is protecting access to devices and the data that they're carrying. For example, not letting people be able to get into your equipment and configure it. That seems silly, but that's the kind of thing that gets overlooked and gets people hacked, right? That chart that goes on outside of 256 is largely because of people's negligence. And we'll talk about in this class some of the things that they can be doing to make that better. So it's not only just the physical access of, hey, lock the room the server's in and make it really hard to physically get in. It's also make it hard to get in through Telnet or SSH or something like that over a network. So a word about security. When it comes to security, there's three things that matter. We call this the CIA triad. So the first one of those is confidentiality. That means only the people that are supposed to get the data get the data. It's confidential, right? Only authorized people get that data. That doesn't sound like a big deal until you think about the fact that you probably don't want just anybody knowing, your medical records, right? That kind of thing needs to be kept private between you and your doctor. Integrity means that the information has not been altered during transmission. So let's say it's a touchy subject. This is the first week of school, but financial aid, right? If you looked at your financial aid balance yesterday and it had money in it, and then you go to look today and there's no money in it because something got altered because the data got hacked, you would be upset, right? You'd be quite upset. So integrity is ensuring that that stuff doesn't get messed with. It's the right value. Availability means having the assurance of timely and reliable access to the data. So it's great if your network is super, super secure, but if you have a router that goes down all the time so you can't move anything across the network, it doesn't do you a lot of good, right? The network needs to be available. It needs to be up. So new trends, bring your own device is a nice new trend. So people are able to bring whatever their device of preference is to work and work on it. There's lots of security risks with that, obviously, that we'll talk about. Online collaboration through wikis, like we talked about, and even Google platforms let you do a lot of that. Video communications as well as cloud computing. So bring your own device. You bring your personal device to work. That can be your laptop, your netbook, your tablet, your smartphone, your e-reader, whatever it is that you are comfortable using at home, so you don't have to be retrained on how to use something that work provides to you. So, for example, you bring your laptop to school and you access Google over the Wi-Fi. You're kind of bringing your device to work/school in that way. Online collaboration is the act of working with others on some sort of joint project. So this is for promotion of teamwork. So if we all wanted to do a spreadsheet, we could all open up a Google Sheet, and then we could see where every other person was entering data on the spreadsheet, and we would all be collaborating together. There's also video communication, so teaching a class remotely to students in another location. Skype is real good for that. Of course, everything is Cisco branded, so they're going to talk about the Cisco telepresence unit. It doesn't have to be that formal big piece of equipment anymore, because we have the capability to talk to each other over the internet using far less expensive things. Then there's cloud computing, storing your personal files or backing up your entire hard disk on servers over the internet or the data center in multiple places, all over the U.S., right? Just in case anything happens to one data center, the other one is going to be fine. So this slideshow is in Google Slides, which is stored on my Google Drive. If I want to edit that from home, I just pull up the Google slide and edit it, and then the next day when I come back, it's the same. I don't have to worry about the location of different files in different spots. So there's one central location for that. Smart homes, everything is smart, everything is connected to the internet now. There are refrigerators that will order you food when you run out of it. It's just terrifying to me. That's so scary. But it's the everyday appliances that are interacting with the internet for some sort of purpose, like the Nest thermostat. So you install this thermostat, and then from your iPhone you can control the temperature of your home, whether you're there or not. That's pretty cool. There's smart lighting that turns on your lights on your front porch at a specific time every night to make it look like you're there. Right. So lots of different technology trends to talk about. Power line networking is using electrical wiring to connect devices with this special adapter, which means you don't have to run a bunch of network cables. But the thing about running network cables is, although it can kind of be a pain, a cable always works unless you mess with it, right? Unless somebody, steps on it and messes up the wires inside of it or something. So a cable does always work. Security is vital to networking. If you want to understand, it's one of the reasons you're in here. If you're in cybersecurity, which I know a lot of y'all are, in order to understand security, you first have to understand all the networking devices and all the flaws within them. Because the whole point of cybersecurity is trying to keep people from exploiting the vulnerabilities in networking stuff. So whether it's a home, whether it's a Fortune 500 company, the principles are all the same. There's a lot of devices, a lot of configuration involved. Threats come internal to the network, they come external to the network. Well, we're going to talk about a little bit of that throughout the course of this. Some of those security threats are, we kind of put things under the umbrella of malware now. So viruses, Trojans, worms, things like that. Some sort of malicious code is a security threat. Spyware and adware that's going to collect information about the user's computer. A zero-day attack is an attack that can occur before the vulnerability has even been reported and even had the chance to be fixed. And a lot of hackers will find those and then try to exploit them all over the internet. There's some kind of famous stories about those. A hacker attack is a knowledgeable person that's trying to get in. A denial of service attack is meant to slow or crash an application or a device. So you can have a denial of service attack that goes against, a router, so that the router has so much traffic that it doesn't know what to do with itself and it just shuts down. Well, that affects the whole network then after that, right? Data interception, so trying to capture private information on a network or as it moves throughout the network. And then identity theft, trying to steal login credentials in some way. So what do we do about it? Well, first off, we need an antivirus. I'm an ABG fan. What do y'all use?
Norton.
Norton, Avast. I read lots of good things about Avast. He said.
The way I look at Norton and McAfee is kind of like you take a big company, put a sheet over and expect it to be working. That's the way I see it.
Okay.
They have contracts with Microsoft, so any kind of.
Well, to be fair, all the antivirus companies, I don't care who they are, all get together and try to block out the same threats. They all talk to each other. None of them has the jump on any other one. Now there may be some performance-based things or some user interface things we're comfortable with, but they're all talking. There's not one of them that's better than the other.
What about that new one, PC-Matic?
Haven't heard of that.
Huh?
Sounds like a virus though.
No.
PC-Matic. Anything that,
No, PC-Matic's a new, they talk about the white list instead of the black
Yeah.
list.
okay,
They use the white list.
okay.
instead of
That
the-
can make sense, yeah.
When they're, yeah,
Yeah, I'll have to look that up. 'Cause I haven't heard of that yet.
must be on cable or something, where I see it all the time.
On where?
Dish cable, advertisement.
Oh, yeah, see, I don't have internet. I mean, I don't have cable, so I don't see, I don't watch commercials.
What's
so
Dish, I mean?
I miss things sometimes.
I mean, that's wrestling,
Yeah, okay.
saw it.
So, the point of being that you need to have some sort of antivirus, and you need to just have one. So if y'all don't know, if I haven't spoken to you personally, my husband and I own an IT company. So he runs it all day, and I do bookkeeping and taxes and stuff at night. So I worked there for 5 years. I've worked with a lot of end users. So I kind of know the way that they think about some things, and I've had to kind of coach them through some stuff. Having more than one antivirus at a time does not make your computer safer. You just need one. I've had people that had 3 installed at once. See, look how safe I am. No, that doesn't work. They're just going to fight each other for control, and everything's going to get through anyway. So having one antivirus, no matter which one you choose, just have one, and then watch where you click and be careful. And a great thing, especially on the business end, is having a firewall. Firewalls are very, very powerful tools. We don't talk about them a ton in this class, but you will later on. But a firewall defines rules for your network. It says this is the stuff that can get in and this is the stuff that can't. And it's very, very powerful. And when it's done correctly, it can save a lot. Okay? You might have a dedicated firewall system. You might have access control lists so that you can forward traffic to specific places or say this person can't do this. We think of that a lot as content filtering, right? So if you want to keep your kids out of, violent websites, let's say, there's a category for that, and you say violent websites, no. And then anything that comes up that could be violent, they get blocked from seeing. It's kind of the same thing. And if any of you have kids, you've probably had to experiment with different kinds of content filtering stuff, just to make sure that they're keeping out of trouble. You can have an intrusion prevention systems, so that is used to identify something that's really fast spreading, like those zero-day attacks that can kind of be difficult to get past. Or you can have a VPN. So people that are remoting in from their remote location, like their home, to the business to do work, they have a secure way of doing that, so their stuff can't get intercepted over the internet. Because the internet is big and bad and full of scary people, right? We don't want them getting too much stuff. So the Cisco network architecture, commercial time, is the devices, connections, and products that are integrated to support the necessary technologies and applications. We will be exploring a lot of those throughout this course and throughout your time at TSTC. So consider this course part of your CCNA training. There are many levels of Cisco. The more certifications you have, the better your job opportunities are. You get jobs, you make more money, everybody's happy. You're happy because you make money. I'm happy because you make money, right? Okay. So the first half of this course I said was the CCENT. So the CCENT stands for Cisco Certified Entry Level Network Technician. So we're like the first half of that bottom triangle right now. That's what this course is. Hopefully by the time you get out, you're a Cisco Certified Network Associate. And then maybe you can go on and get more certifications throughout your career, because our fantastic teaching skills will teach you exactly how to pass those exams. Why are you laughing? You don't laugh at that part. So, what we've talked about today, and I understand I went kind of quickly, but I don't like to stand up here and talk for an hour and a half. I'm not that instructor. We talked about networks and how they're used in everyday life. We talked about topologies, both physical and logical, and what on earth they're good for. Why would I want to take the time to make all those maps? Well, we talked about that. Characteristics of a network that supports communication from small to medium-sized business, and then some different trends that we talked about. So, if you got the email that you gave me, you should have got an invitation, unless you just showed up today, and I'll work with you. You did. To get into Cisco Network Academy. So it sent you something, and it said, hey, click here, make your account, make your own password, and then it linked you to my class. We need to make sure you all get in Cisco Networking Academy before you leave today, okay? So, as far as what you need to do to be successful in my class, I want to be up front and let everybody know about this. Right here, when you get into the class, this is what the class looks like when you pop up. If you click modules, you'll see Chapter 1, Explore the Network. That's what we just did. Okay? If I say launch Chapter 1, you get basically an interactive ebook. So it's not just some videos, and I didn't go through every video and every single thing that was gone over today, just for the purposes of time. But you get to pick your cutesy background. And then you can scroll through, and it will go through an introduction. And it will go through some different activities. Here's the video that we showed in class. Then throughout, it'll give you a concept, and then maybe it'll give you some sort of interactive activity to help you memorize things. So that's all part of Chapter 1. Now, and there's quite a bit more. If you click up here, you can see here's all the sections that were in Chapter 1. If you want to jump straight to one, you can do that and open up that slide. Okay. Yes, sir.
Does this say like 001.2 or is that what it just says? I'm lost in there.
I don't know. Well, hold on. We'll check.
Yeah, okay.
We'll check. So when you go back to the modules part of the course, when I say to take the Chapter 1 quiz, that's the Chapter 1 quiz. Okay? When I say to take the Chapter 1 exam, it's right there. It's all located within Cisco Network Academy. Now what the point of the Moodle is to show you, these are the parts I want you to accomplish today. Okay? So today we did the Chapter 1 presentation. I want you to go through the Chapter 1 of the Cisco Academy and fill out the study guide. And I'm also going to give you a terms and key terms assignment that's a crossword puzzle. We're just going to do that this time because it's something kind of different for the first chapter, so you don't all drop my class. Okay? Now, if you go to the Moodle, right here you see Chapter 1 study guide. right? If you open that up, it's a Word document that is basically an outline where you fill in the blanks of everything that Chapter 1 went over. So you have the ability to either type in that or print that out and write in it and go through Chapter 1 and take notes, okay? If you handwrite your study guide, not type, if you handwrite your study guide, I will let you use that on the chapter exam. Every single week. So the way that you're successful in this class is you come in here and you listen to me, okay? That's always step one, right? Then you go through the content, you fill out the study guide, you do the lab work, which we'll do when we meet again. Then you take the exam, and then we move on. Okay? Yes?
So if we do the handwriting, we can use it later?
Yes.
Does that mean we can do it on the computer and then print it out?
No.
No? So it has to,
It
I have
has
to
to
actually.
be handwritten, yes. That is to prevent people from one person doing it and then everybody using that. So until technology is such that I don't have to worry about that, then it's got to be handwritten. Some people do better memorizing by hand. I know I do. So if you want to fill it out and type it and then just not use it on the exam, that's fine too. Just so long as you did it, then you should be fine. So for today, go through Chapter 1, fill out your study guide. At the very, very least, read Chapter 1 because I didn't go through everything in it. Okay? And complete the crossword puzzle on the back. When both those things are done, you can leave.